Did Shanquella Robinson's so-called friends really lure her to Cabo with the intention of hurting her, and even planning her death? That's the question haunting millions right now. Weeks after her tragic passing, the internet refuses to let this story die. People everywhere are demanding answers, furious at the silence and contradictions.
When they got back from the trip with her luggage, what did they tell you happened to your daughter?
That she got sick from drinking. It was alcohol.
And just when we thought this heartbreaking case couldn't possibly get darker, new details suggest Shanquella's death wasn't some freak accident. It may have been orchestrated by the very people she trusted enough to vacation with. Think about that for a second. A young woman, full of life, heading out on what was supposed to be a fun birthday getaway with her closest circle, only to never return home. The betrayal in this story is so heavy, it feels like a true crime thriller, except it's painfully real. So, how did things unravel? Here's the breakdown for those who haven't been glued to every update. Shanquella traveled to Cabo, Mexico with 6 friends for a birthday trip.
When they got back from the trip with her luggage, what did they tell you happened to your daughter?
That she got sick from drinking. It was alcohol.
The group included Malik Dyer, Winter Donovan, Elise Hyatt, Dejani Jackson, her best friend Khalil Cook, and Nazir Wiggins. The plan seemed simple enough, 7 friends enjoying paradise. But paradise turned into a nightmare. Shanquella was perfectly healthy when she left North Carolina. Yet within 24 hours of arriving in Cabo, she was gone. And the people she trusted to have her back suddenly had stories that didn't add up. Nazir later came forward with a suspicious claim. He insisted he wasn't even there when it all went down, saying he arrived in Cabo a full day after the rest of the group. According to him, he walked into a tragedy already in motion. But his timeline raised just as many questions as it answered. If he wasn't there when the fatal events happened, then who was, and why did every single version of the story sound different?
When was the last time you heard from him?
That's the part tearing the internet apart right now. Why would a group of friends allegedly turn on Shanquella so viciously?
I heard from him since the autopsy came back. And that's been about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago when the autopsy first came back. And I haven't heard from him since.
Was it jealousy, a hidden grudge, or something much darker? And if the FBI is now saying her death was not an accident, what exactly do they know that hasn't been shared publicly yet? The world is waiting for clarity, and in the meantime, all we're left with are chilling questions. Did they lure her there knowing exactly what they wanted to do? Or did things spiral out of control in the heat of the moment? Either way, the fact that Shanquella's last hours were spent surrounded by people she trusted makes this case one of the most disturbing tragedies we've seen in years.
If the U.S. authorities and potentially a U.S. court are not convinced that the Mexicans have a very strong case, then it's very unlikely that she would be extradited.
According to Shanquella's mother, the lies began almost immediately after the group touched down in Cabo. Khalil, the man Shanquella trusted enough to call her best friend, phoned her mom the very next day with a story that now looks like a carefully crafted cover-up. He claimed Shanquella had drunk too much and was suffering from alcohol poisoning, which was why she wasn't feeling well. On that call, her mom was worried, but had no reason to doubt him. After all, Khalil wasn't just a friend, he was like family. But then, a few hours later, the phone rang again. This time, Khalil said medical staff were inside the villa trying to resuscitate Shanquella. Moments later, another devastating update, he told her she hadn't made it. Imagine the panic and heartbreak her mother must have felt, sitting in North Carolina, helplessly relying on Khalil's words to understand what was happening thousands of miles away. Here's where it gets chilling. Instead of staying in Mexico to support investigations or at the very least bring her body home, Khalil and the rest of the group abruptly decided to cut their trip short. They boarded flights back to North Carolina, but left Shanquella's body behind in Cabo. What they didn't leave behind, however, was her luggage. Khalil personally brought her suitcases to her parents' home, still insisting to her grieving mother that Shanquella had died from alcohol poisoning. And at first, her family believed him. Why wouldn't they? Khalil had been around for years. He spent time at their house, shared meals, and was trusted like one of their own. Even after returning from Cabo, he continued to visit, sitting with them in their living room, repeating the same story about alcohol poisoning while acting like nothing more sinister had happened. But then came the bombshell that shattered the entire narrative. The report didn't say alcohol poisoning. Instead, it revealed that Shanquella had suffered a broken neck and severe spinal cord injuries completely inconsistent with drinking too much. For her family, the truth was like being blindsided all over again. Not only had they lost their daughter, but the people they trusted most had looked them in the eye, dropped off her belongings, and fed them a story that was crumbling piece by piece. That moment changed everything. The trust was gone. The lies were undeniable. And the suspicions about what really happened in Cabo began to explode. Before we get into the bombshell autopsy results that blew this case wide open, we need to talk about the shady police report that first surfaced in Cabo. This document is now one of the most controversial parts of the entire investigation. According to the report, Shanquella's so-called friends told medical staff that she had been drinking heavily, was dehydrated, and needed help. They painted a picture of alcohol poisoning so severe that it explained why she wasn't doing well. On the surface, that story sounded believable, it's spring break behavior, and medics in a tourist-heavy city like Cabo have probably seen that excuse 1,000 times before. But here's where the alarm bells should have gone off. The police report also revealed that when doctors recommended taking Shanquella to the hospital for treatment, her friends allegedly refused. Yes, refused. They wanted the medics to treat her right there in the villa. That refusal alone should have raised red flags, but somehow, the attending medics didn't push back hard enough. Instead, they accepted the group's word and continued treating her on site. Looking back with what we now know, that decision was catastrophic. Her so-called friends may have deliberately lied to medical professionals to buy themselves time, or worse, to cover up what really happened. The fact that they insisted she not be taken to a hospital suggests they knew the truth about her injuries wouldn't match their alcohol poisoning story. And here's the disturbing part, at that point, Mexican authorities didn't dig deeper. They officially treated the situation as an accidental death, consistent with alcohol poisoning. No further investigation. No urgency. No suspicion that foul play was involved. To them, it was just another tourist tragedy. But then came the autopsy, and it contradicted everything in that police report, down to the most critical detail, her cause of death and her time of death. According to the police paperwork, Shanquella supposedly passed away in the late afternoon after medical staff had been trying to revive her. But the autopsy told a different story. It revealed severe spinal cord injuries and a broken neck, injuries that had nothing to do with alcohol. And even more shocking, the autopsy suggested she may have died much earlier than the timeline her friends and the police report laid out. This wasn't just a discrepancy. It was evidence that someone was lying. Either way, the autopsy exposed a cover-up, showing the world that Shanquella's death was not the accident her friends tried to make it out to be, it was something much more sinister. According to the police report, Shanquella was said to have passed away around 6 p.m. But the autopsy completely refuted that timeline, listing her official time of death as closer to 3 p.m. Now, in forensic investigations, a small lapse in determining time of death is normal, but a 3-hour gap? That's not a minor detail. That's a major red flag. It suggested the official police report was flawed at best, and deliberately misleading at worst. The autopsy also confirmed something far darker than alcohol poisoning. It listed Shanquella's cause of death as severe spinal cord injury and atlantoaxial subluxation, which is when there's excessive or unstable movement between the first 2 vertebrae of the neck. That type of trauma is consistent with physical assault, not a night of drinking. In other words, the medical truth backed up what so many people online were already suspecting: Shanquella had been attacked. And here's the detail that sealed the deal: the autopsy made no mention of alcohol in her system. None. If she truly had alcohol poisoning, it would have shown up loud and clear in toxicology results. The absence of alcohol evidence completely shredded her friend's story, exposing it for what it was: a cover-up. The confirmation was devastating. But then came the evidence that sent this case viral, the fight video. Out of nowhere, a disturbing clip leaked online showing Shanquella being violently beaten by one of her so-called friends, Dejani Jackson. In the footage, Dejani can be seen hitting Shanquella repeatedly, while Shanquella doesn't fight back at all. She was defenseless, trying to shield herself, but the blows kept coming. What made the video even more chilling wasn't just the brutality, it was the behavior of the others in the room. Instead of stopping the fight, instead of defending the woman they called their friend, the rest of the group just stood by. Some even filmed. You can hear someone saying, "At least fight back." But Shanquella didn't fight back. She was being assaulted while her so-called friends sat there, complicit in the violence, treating it like a spectacle instead of a life-or-death situation. This clip was the turning point. It destroyed any lingering belief in the alcohol poisoning excuse. It proved that Shanquella's injuries weren't some mysterious accident, they came from a direct, vicious attack. And the fact that no one in that room tried to stop it, no one tried to protect her, made the betrayal even more gut-wrenching. Hashtags calling for accountability flooded social media, and people around the world were united in anger. How could a young woman be lured on vacation, beaten by her own friends, left behind in Mexico, and then lied about in official reports? For Shanquella's family, the fight video wasn't just evidence, it was proof that their daughter's death wasn't an accident. It was a crime. In that chilling fight video, Khalil, her so-called best friend, can even be heard saying, "Quella, can you at least fight back?" That line broke the internet, because it showed he wasn't trying to stop the violence, he was egging it on. Instead of protecting her, he treated it like entertainment. And tragically, the autopsy results confirmed what so many already feared, the injuries Shanquella suffered could have easily come from that brutal assault. Reports also suggest that it wasn't just Dejani Jackson who put hands on Shanquella. Another friend, Winter Donovan, allegedly joined in, hitting her and even slamming her into a wall. That kind of trauma, combined with the autopsy's findings of severe spinal cord damage, paints a horrifying picture of what actually happened in that villa. As the video went viral, public outrage exploded. Hashtags demanding justice for Shanquella flooded social media, and people around the world voiced their disgust, not only at the violence itself. Her parents refused to stay silent, appearing in interviews, pushing for answers, and demanding that authorities take action. Their determination made it impossible for officials to ignore the case any longer. Under mounting pressure, Mexican authorities were forced to reopen the investigation. What was once dismissed as an accidental death was now being reconsidered under an entirely new light. They reversed their earlier ruling of a non-suspicious, and officially declared Shanquella's death a femicide. For those who don't know, femicide is defined as the killing of a woman specifically because of her gender. In Mexico, it has a serious charge, one that carries a potential sentence of up to 60 years in prison if convicted. By categorizing Shanquella's death as femicide, Mexican authorities weren't just admitting they mishandled the case, they were confirming that her killing wasn't random, wasn't accidental, and may have been fueled by deep-seated malice. The ruling also raised a disturbing possibility that this trip may have been planned with violence in mind from the very beginning. If investigators believe Shanquella was targeted because of her gender and her vulnerabilities, then the theory that her friends lured her to Cabo with sinister intentions becomes much harder to dismiss. It suggests premeditation, that the seeds of betrayal were planted long before the plane even touched down in Mexico. And with the FBI now stepping in to assist, this case isn't just a local investigation anymore, it's an international one. Both countries are under pressure to deliver answers, and the world is watching closely. Because at this point, the evidence doesn't just point to a tragedy, it points to a setup. For many people, the most disturbing part of the leaked fight video wasn't just the violence, it was the silence. The fact that Shanquella's so-called friends stood there, filming and watching her get beaten without stepping in, convinced the internet that this wasn't a random fight. It looked like a setup. A group attack. A betrayal that had been planned long before the first punch was ever thrown. And then came another chilling piece of evidence. A second video from the Cabo trip surfaced online, sending the case into an even darker direction. In this clip, the group can be seen hanging out without Shanquella, talking, whispering, and plotting. You can even hear someone mocking her shoes, saying, "Hi, my shoes that I don't want to wear. Cute. F***. Said they crow. The vibe was off. They were clearly trying to keep her out of the loop, making sure she couldn't hear what they were talking about. To many viewers, it screamed secrecy. It screamed planning. That second video became a huge red flag. It suggested the group wasn't just vacationing, they were deliberately excluding her, maybe even orchestrating what would eventually happen. And when you line that up with the fact that they left Mexico so quickly after her death, suspicions skyrocket. Think about it, Shanquella dies under mysterious, violent circumstances, and within hours, her so-called friends pack up, leave her body in Mexico, and rush back to the United States. Who does that? To the public, it felt like a calculated move, commit violence in another country, then escape across the border before the authorities can react. The optics alone were damning. Her friends brought her luggage home, but not her body. They lied to her parents' faces, repeating the alcohol poisoning story over and over. And then they cut ties as soon as the truth started leaking out. That kind of behavior doesn't look like grief, it looks like guilt. Online, outrage exploded. People flooded Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok with demands for accountability. Comments like, "So all of these people involved in Shanquella Robinson's murder need to be arrested and put away for life." Others warned, if that doesn't happen, it's not going to be good. The public consensus was clear, this wasn't an accident. This wasn't even just one fight. It was a planned attack. A coordinated betrayal. People everywhere are saying what Shanquella's family already knows, she was set up by the very people she trusted. And if justice doesn't come swiftly, the outrage isn't going away anytime soon. Because this case isn't just about one woman's death, it is about the terrifying realization that a group of friends may have planned her downfall step by step. The more you sit with the details of Shanquella Robinson's assault, the harder it is to swallow. This wasn't just a drunken argument gone too far. This wasn't a tragic accident. All the evidence points to something much darker, premeditation. Her so-called friends planned the trip, they caught her at her most vulnerable, and they recorded the violence not to stop it, but to humiliate her. That's not friendship, that's betrayal at the highest level. And now, the authorities are finally starting to confirm what the public has suspected from the very beginning. Shanquella's death was not only violent, it was intentional. Mexican authorities recently made a shocking announcement that changes everything. They confirmed that they have issued an arrest warrant for one of Shanquella's friends, believed to be the main aggressor in the brutal assault. In their statement, officials said, "This case is fully clarified. We even have a court order. There is an arrest warrant issued for the crime of femicide to the detriment of the victim and against an alleged perpetrator, a friend of hers." Who is the direct aggressor? Actually, it wasn't a quarrel, but instead a direct aggression. We are carrying out all the pertinent procedures such as the Interpol alert and the request for extradition to the United States of America. It's about two Americans, the victim and the culprit. While they didn't publicly confirm the name of the suspect, this statement shook the internet. It proved that Mexican prosecutors weren't just taking the case seriously, they were calling it exactly what it was, femicide. And with an arrest warrant and an Interpol alert in play, there's no more hiding. Extradition from the United States is now on the table. For Shanquella's family, this was the first glimpse of real justice after weeks of lies, silence, and confusion. Their fight to keep her story alive forced international authorities to take action. And for the public, this development confirmed what they had been saying all along, this was never about alcohol poisoning. This was a cold-blooded attack. The outrage hasn't slowed down. People continue to flood social media with demands that every single person involved in the trip be held accountable, not just the main aggressor. The belief is that everyone who stood by, watched, recorded, and lied afterwards is complicit. Because in the end, Shanquella's death wasn't just the result of one person's violence. It was the silence of the group. This story has become bigger than one tragedy. It's a warning about trust, betrayal, and how quickly envy can turn deadly. Shanquella Robinson's name is now etched into history, not because of who she was within Cabo, but because of the fight for justice her death sparked across the world. And make no mistake, the saga is far from over. With international warrants issued, extradition requests in motion, and the world watching closely, the push for justice is just beginning. So now the question is, will every single person responsible for betraying Shanquella finally be brought to justice? Or will the system fail her the same way her so-called friends did? One thing is certain, this case won't be forgotten. The internet made sure of that. Shanquella's story is now global, and her name will continue to echo until the justice she deserves is finally delivered. It's widely believed that the arrest warrant was issued against Dejani Jackson, the friend caught on camera viciously attacking Shanquella in the now infamous video. That footage alone made her the face of the case in the court of public opinion. And while the news of an arrest warrant brought a wave of hope, there's a brutal reality: extradition from the United States to Mexico isn't guaranteed. According to legal experts, the probability of extradition happening is a coin toss, about 50-50ths. For Mexico to succeed, their case has to be airtight. If it isn't, the suspect may never set foot in a Mexican courtroom. That uncertainty has left many people frustrated, worried that justice could slip through the cracks of international red tape. But here's where it gets interesting: even if extradition falls apart, that doesn't mean the group is safe. Because the FBI is watching closely. U.S. authorities could still file charges on American soil if they believe crimes were committed. And the FBI has already made it official. In a rare public statement, they said, the FBI's Charlotte field office has opened an investigation into the death of Charlotte resident Shanquella Robinson in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, on or about October 29, 2022. Due to the ongoing investigation, we have no further comments. Short, direct, and powerful. The feds are on it. That statement alone has kept the case alive in the headlines, showing that Shanquella's death isn't being brushed aside. Between Mexico's femicide charge and the FBI's investigation, this case is officially international, and every move will be scrutinized by the public. But for now, the frustration remains. Shanquella's family and millions of supporters online want more than statements. They want arrests, they want accountability, and they want to see every single person who betrayed her face consequences. Whether it's in Mexico or the United States, the demand for justice isn't going anywhere. At the end of the day, this case is bigger than one arrest warrant. It's about betrayal, lies, and the horrifying reality that a young woman's life was cut short by the very people she trusted most. Shanquella Robinson's name has become a rallying cry, not just for her family, but for everyone demanding justice when the system seems stacked against victims. So what happens next? Will Dejani Jackson and the others face justice in Mexico, or will the FBI step in and deliver consequences here in the States? Will the truth of what really happened in Cabo ever fully come out? One thing is certain, the world is still watching, and the internet isn't letting this case disappear. Shanquella Robinson's story will continue to echo until her killers are held accountable. That's all I've got for now, but this story is far from over. Stick around, because the next update could change everything.